Taoiseach, I'm sure you'd agree with me that the documentary aired by the BBC last Tuesday night about how the Catholic Church dealt with child abuse back in 1975 was another shocking chapter in the sad litany of which we are all only too well aware from reading reports like the Ryan Report, the Murphy Report and the Klein Report. I think you'd also agree with me that the Church's inaction on that occasion led to many more vulnerable, defenceless people being abused. Taoiseach, I suggest to you that everybody in this House will agree that every citizen has now and always had at least a moral obligation to report any abuse to the civil authorities. The Taoiseach said in a speech to the House, presumably with the agreement of the Government, last July, in the wake of the Klein Report, he said, and I quote, "Today, the Catholic Church needs to be a penitent church, a church truly and deeply penitent for the horrors it perpetrated, hid and denied." In the light of that, and the light of the revelations in the BBC documentary, what is the Government's position, or does it have a position, on the standing and future of Cardinal Brady, who is head of the Catholic Church in Ireland?
Well, I agree with Deputy O'Dea that what we saw and what was reported in the documentary was another horrific episode in the failure of senior figures in the Catholic Church to protect children and to report the abuse and rape of children. The rape of a child, the abuse of a child is a crime. It was a crime then. And the place for crimes to be prosecuted, investigated and dealt with is in our courts and by our Gardaí. I don't believe that there is a parallel system of law which deals with these matters, and that anybody who has or who had knowledge about the rape or abuse of a child has a duty to report it to the authorities. And whatever may be said about it was 1975 and it was whatever number of years ago and in whatever context, there were plenty of opportunities since then for the information regarding the abuse and rape of those children to be brought to the attention of the Gardaí and the matters which were known to be reported, not least when the case of Father Brendan Smith, who was at the centre of that, came to public attention. And you will recall, Deputy O'Dea, that as far as the political response to that issue at the time was concerned, that particular episode caused the collapse of a government and the establishment of a new government. As far as the government is concerned, we are putting in place much stronger rules and regulations in respect of responsibility to children. The draft Children First Bill, which was published by the Minister for Children and Youth Affairs last week, will make it a statutory obligation on organisations and named individuals to report information about abuse or significant neglect to the HSE, whether it occurs in the organisation or elsewhere. And the purpose of this bill is to protect the child about whom there is a concern, but also to protect other children in the community from an abuser who may be abusing multiple children. The Children First Bill will require that a priest, as a pastoral member of a religious organisation, will be required to report concerns about abuse directly to the HSE. In addition to that, as you know, the Minister for Justice has published legislation where the withholding of information about sexual abuse will itself be a criminal offence. As far as your question about the government's position in relation to Cardinal Brady is concerned, let me say this. I have always believed in the separation of church and state. I think it is the job of government and of the state to enact our laws and to ensure that those laws apply to everybody, whether they belong to a church or not. But it is my own personal view that anybody who did not deal with the scale of the abuse that we have seen in this case should not hold a position of authority.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy O'Dea.
I thank the Taoiseach for his comprehensive reply. I'm aware of the legislation you refer to, and I welcome that legislation, and I look forward to it being brought forward as quickly as possible. Now, Taoiseach, I have to say that your forthright reply here this morning contrasts very starkly with the reaction of the Taoiseach when he was asked about this yesterday evening. The Taoiseach made a speech in this House last July which was widely lauded from one end of this country to the other. Epithets like brave, courageous, forward-thinking, etc. filled the airwaves. And yet, when presented with a concrete example, it's easy to be brave in the abstract, but when presented with a concrete example and asked what his position was, he refused to take the same position as you have clearly taken here this morning. Now, I take it that what the position you're stating this morning is your personal position, and presumably the position of your party. It is not a government position.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, let me deal with this very directly now, Deputy OD. Let there be absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind about where the Taoiseach stands on this issue. The Taoiseach made no. Hold on a second. No, don't turn what is. Don't turn, Deputy OD. What is a very serious issue, and about which people in this country, up and down this country, are rightly horrified about what happened and about the failure to report it. Don't attempt to turn that into some kind of a political whack at the Taoiseach. The Taoiseach was the first Taoiseach of this country who came into this House and who addressed this in the most forthright and direct way about where responsibility lay and where the responsibility of church authorities lay. And I know, and I think everybody who has heard the Taoiseach speak on that knows exactly where he stands on it. And as far as it's one thing. I mean, the criticism may be made that you can come into the House and make a speech and so on. The proof of the pudding is what we have done as a government, and what the follow-up that we have given to the Cloyne report, presenting after 14 years when, to be honest, not a great deal was happening in this area. We have produced the legislation in relation. We have produced the legislation which will underpin the Children First guidelines. It is hugely robust. It is before a committee of the Houses at the moment, and in addition to that, because there has been this ambiguity about what happens where things are not reported, and whether or not it can be reported, or whether there's some kind of a parallel system of justice that operates somewhere under some other system of law, whether you call it canon law or whatever, and that somehow that can be dealt with separately. We have made it very clear in the legislation that the Minister for Justice has brought forward that the withholding of information about sex abuse, about the abuse of children, will not be acceptable and will itself be an offence. So let there be absolutely no doubt about where the government stands, where the Taoiseach stands, and where every member of the government stands in relation to this horrific abuse.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald.
I got to Count Corla. And can I...
Please, I called Deputy MacDonald. Thank you.
And if I might, Count Corla, welcome.
Sorry, Minister. Minister, would you mind? Minister, would you mind, please? The rules apply to you the same as every other member.
We shall chatter with calm down.
I'll be asking you to leave the House if you're not careful. Deputy MacDonald, please.
Okay.
The rules apply to everybody equally in this House.
I give it another go. Can I just, if I might, from my own part, on behalf of Sinn Féin, welcome most sincerely the clarity and the forthrightness, if there's such a word, of the response of An Taoiseach. This is a matter that I'd like to return to this morning under promised legislation, but I warmly welcome and acknowledge your response, and indeed the efforts, most particularly of Minister Francis Fitzgerald in the area of child protection. Taoiseach, yesterday your party colleague Senator Gilroy highlighted the fact that senators earn €27,000 less than TDs. Now, I'm not sure whether he was actually calling for a reduction in the salary of TDs or an increase in senators' pay. You might explain. I want to ask you what the Labour Party's position is on pay for politicians and special advisors. I believe that given the real suffering of people that this issue needs to be addressed. Yesterday's Live Register figures show that 436,000 people were without a job. I've no doubt that this figure is kept low because of the huge level of emigration. Now, people are actively looking for work, to pay their bills, to look after their families, and yet they still see their politicians, the political class, enjoying lavish salaries and perks of office. And at a time when your government is planning to impose water charges and other charges on hard-pressed households, and could I just say, for the benefit in particular of our Labour colleagues, that Conor Murphy is here, the former Sinn Féin minister, who stopped water charges in the north of Ireland. So you might want to. You might want to
would you please address your remarks to the chair,
later
please?
on.
Thank you. Deputy, would you?
Punish that.
Sorry, Deputy, would you please address your remarks to the chair?
You earn a salary of over €184,000. That's 6 times.
Sorry.
That is 6 times the average industrial wage. 2 of your own special advisors
have your question, please,
€168,000 and €155,000 respectively. So can you punish them? Set out for us the position on high pay for politicians, and can you tell us what you propose to do about these runaway, extravagant levels of pay?
Well, first of all, I can do better.
Sorry, please.
I can do better than that. I can tell Sinn Féin what the government have already done. The very first decision that this government took was to cut the pay of politicians, cut the pay of the Taoiseach, cut the pay of every minister in the government, we cut the pay of TDs. What TDs and senators are paid, in this Dáil is considerably less than what they had been paid in the previous Dáil. We also cut the payments which attach to ministerial transport, for example. That's down by 65%. We also cut, or at least attempted to cut, the amount of expenses that were paid to TDs. Mind you, when I looked at the league table of the expenses claimed by members of the House, I notice that the expenses claimed by members of Sinn Féin are at the top end of the league table. So, Deputy, and
sorry, please. Sorry, could I have the Taoiseach, please? Thank you.
And that's.
Maybe you might listen, please.
And that.
Would you please allow the Taoiseach to reply? Would you please allow the... Would you stay quiet? Thank you. Taoiseach, please proceed.
And that, of course...
Would you stay quiet, please? Thank you.
And those claims, of course, don't include the rather extravagant claim of ink cartridges, which I see was claimed by Sinn Féin. With regard to the Senate, the government is proposing a constitutional amendment, which we intend to have a referendum, which it is proposed to abolish the Senate. And you may indicate to us in your reply where you stand on that question. With regard to the issue of employment, the government is very focused on getting investment and employment into this country. And we have, over recent weeks, had a considerable amount of success in that area. You will, I'm sure, be aware of the announcements of jobs. PayPal, 1,000 jobs in Louth. Apple, 500 jobs in Cork. Cisco, 115 jobs in Galway. Eli Lilly, 500 jobs in Cork Southwest. Mylan, 500 jobs in North Dublin. Microsoft, a $130 million investment in Dublin. HP, 280 jobs in Galway and Kildare. Abbott Pharmaceutical, 175 jobs in Sligo. Amgen 100 jobs in Dunleary, and there's another announcement of 250 jobs again today. And of course we intend to continue with that work to get the level of unemployment down and to get people back into employment.
Thank you, Tánaiste. Deputy Mayor.
So, the short of it then, Tánaiste, is that you are defending the current pay rates of politicians. You think that at a time of crisis it is appropriate that An Taoiseach takes home €200,000. You defend your own pay of €184,000. So what message are we sending to the people who are out of work, or to the lone parents who were so brutally dealt with in the recent social welfare legislation? Are we saying to them, are you saying to them, well, too bad, things are tough, you know, suck up the austerity, but we're okay, Jack? Strikes me that that's your message. Your own pay, Tánaiste, doubled over the last year when you moved from the opposition benches into your government position.
Please. Thank you.
And it defies all logic and rationality that you, the champions of austerity, the champions of cutbacks, so in such a way defend these pay rates that cannot be justified, and yet say to the general public, to people who are struggling, that they have to take more and more hardship.
Tánaiste.
The Taoiseach doesn't take home €200,000. There is a difference. There is a difference. There is a difference. There is a difference between gross pay and take-home pay. And what this government has done, and let's be clear about this, is it has cut the take-home pay of people at senior level in politics of about 44%. That has been the total cut in take-home pay. Now, there is a limit, I think, to the amount of hypocrisy that we can take from Sinn Féin on this question. A party that sees nothing wrong with having its members take a salary from a parliament they don't attend at all, take considerable expenses from a parliament taking expenses from a parliament that they don't attend, and as I've said earlier, your party, the Sinn Féin party, is at the top end. And anybody can go and have a look at the league tables. They've all been published of the expenses claimed by members of the House, and you will find consistently that Sinn Féin is at the top. Sinn Féin is at the top end of those claims, and interestingly, at the top end in most of the constituencies when compared to constituency colleagues who presumably would have the same level of travel expenses and so on and so forth. So when you're in a position. Thank you. When you're in a position to address that level of hypocrisy, then you can come and make charges of us.
Thank you. Deputy Pringle. Deputy Pringle, please. Thank you. Sorry, can I have a bit of silence for Deputy Pringle? Thank you.
Here. Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Tánaiste, Machiavellian descriptive narrative and deceptive adjectives abound from the government this week, with words like disaster creating illusions of doomsday scenarios every time the Fiscal Compact Treaty is mentioned. Doubt about future funding is the stick that this government are using to beat the Irish people into submission on May the 31st. Surely lessons should have been learned by this stage about the aftermath of signing treaties when ambiguities abound. What a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. The fear factor of there will be no money in the ATMs, no money for teachers, nurses or pensioners, and in recent days, the intervention of that well-known Shanachie, Minister Noonan, raising the spectre of the December budget, saying he will tax you. And as this drama plays out, like a Shakespearean tragedy,
would you please allow him put his question?
Albeit this one being poorly scripted, the government banshee keens on. There will be no foreign direct investment. Its angle is Ashes Part 2, the treaty sequel. The scenarios of Armageddon being peddled are truly staggering. Tánaiste, if the European Financial Stability Facility funding will not be available to this country, why then did the European heads of state in a statement on March the 30th state that any member state in a programme will be funded up to the point where they can return to the markets?
Sorry, would
Therefore,
you please?
Tánaiste,
Thank you.
under the current programme, are you intending to make a new application or use the rollover facility that you seem to choose to ignore that is available to this country under the EFSF?
Thank you, Deputy. Tánaiste to reply.
Shane will be in the chamber when this.
Sorry, I called on the Tánaiste to reply. Thank you. Sorry, would you please allow the reply now? Thank you. This is simple. Somebody asks a question and they get an answer. Thank you very much. Could you please answer?
Okay.
Deputy Higgins. Thank you. This is the last time I will ask both sides of the House to stay quiet. The next time there'll be action taken. Tánaiste.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. There's no ambiguity, and I'm very happy to answer directly the question that the deputy has asked. The position is that the programme that Ireland is in, the EU, IMF, ECB programme, the programme that we have with the Troika, that programme will remain in place, continue and be honoured until the programme expires at the end of 2013. It is the government's hope and intention that by that stage we will be back in the markets, that we will be able to say goodbye to the Troika, and that we will be able to fund our state and fund our state in the normal way by access to the markets. Payments from the EFSF will continue to be honoured up to the end of that point. The European Stability Mechanism, which is the permanent emergency fund for the euro, will come into effect once 90% of the capital has been provided for it. It's due to come into effect in July of 2012. After the end of our programme, the only emergency funding that will be available to this country is the ESM. The EFSF will not be taking new applications for funding. The only funding that will be available will be the ESM. In order for us to have access to the ESM, we are required to ratify the treaty, because the ESM will only be available. The ESM.
Sorry, would you please? Thank you.
The ESM will only be available to states who ratified the treaty. So the position is that the only emergency funding that will be available once our programme is over, the only emergency funding that is available once our programme is over at the end of 2013 is the European Stability Mechanism. And in order for us to be sure that we would have access to that if we needed it, it is necessary that we ratify the treaty.
Thank you. Deputy Pringle. Deputy Pringle, please. Thank you. He's quite capable of speaking for himself. Deputy Ellis. Deputy Ellis. Deputy Ellis. I called Deputy Pringle. Thank you.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Tánaiste, I don't take much comfort from the government's forlorn hope that we'll be able to return to the markets at the end of the current programme. All the commentators, economists, all around the world seem adamant that we will require a second bailout programme. And there are options available to this government. And the EFSF makes up that option. And Tánaiste, I would like you to explain to the House why, in the Articles of Association of the EFSF, it clearly states, and I quote, in Chapter 1, Paragraph 4, financings granted prior to such date may have scheduled maturities falling after such date, and disbursements thereunder may occur. So the option is open to this government to make a decision in 2013 and to apply to the EFSF for rollover funding or a new programme, and that will ensure our funding into the future. And that option is open to you, and why isn't this government considering it?
Thank you, Deputy. Coniston.
No, that option is not open to us, and let us be absolutely clear about that. What the EFSF is prepared to do, and what is clear in the treaty, is that it will continue the funding to us that is already committed to under the existing programme. When that programme finishes at the end of 2013, the government's intention is that we'll be back in the markets. In order to get back in the markets, we have to get our economy to recover and grow and so on, and that's why the inward investment that I talked about earlier, the various jobs announcements and so on, that they will come. And we're confident that we will be able to continue to attract that investment, provided there is continued investor confidence in this country. And that investor confidence.
Sorry, would you please allow the Taoiseach? Sorry. Deputy McGrath, would you please? Deputy McGrath, please.
Deputy Pringle,
Will you stop shouting, please?
Deputy Pringle has asked me a very straight and I think an important question.
We'd like to hear the answer.
And I want to give the answer
without
his colleagues constantly interrupting it.
Now, would you please stay quiet and hear the answer? Thank you.
The position, as I said, is that our intention is to be back in the markets, and in order to do that, we continue the investment. That continued investment is dependent on there being a stable euro, which is again why it is necessary for us to ratify this treaty. Now, Deputy Pringle, you say that you don't believe that we will get back into the markets. If we don't get back into the markets, and if it turns out, as you claim that it will turn out, that a second bailout will be necessary, where will we get the money? The only source of funding that will be available, is the ESM, and access to the ESM will only be possible if the treaty is ratified.
Thank you.
So, if we want as a country to have, and I think it's prudent, to have the insurance, the safety net, the reliability that is associated with having emergency funding available to us, the only source of that, let's be clear about it, is the ESM, and access to that means ratifying the treaty.
Thank you. That completes Leader's questions.